I will take you with me. You might learn something.
About soccer?
Nah, mate. Not about soccer. And for fuck's sake, stop saying soccer!
Don't have high expectations for a Premier League game. You might be very disappointed.
Yeah.
Put this way.
Greetings to all the listeners of the Assistant Professor of Football in England, but most who listen are not from there, but from somewhere else in the world, often from America. And if that's you, and you're thinking of dreaming of going to England, seeing a Premier League game, dive into the atmosphere that you see on TV, or even have concrete plans to see the one game of the club that you otherwise follow on TV, then this episode is for you. And if you're listening for England and you've been going to your local club for years and for decades, I promise it's also for you. Felipe Tobar, originally from Brazil, is a scholar at Clemson University in South Carolina and has written about tourism to England, Premier League related, club museums, stadium tours, and so on. The kind of stuff that football tourists do, but also about over-tourism, its effect on local fans, and the danger that English Premier League themed football tourism could be to the very product that the Premier League is trying to sell. We begin by mapping a little bit what this tourism is, how the combination of capitalism, international TV, and individual clubs' initiatives have shaped this billion-dollar business around the beautiful game in the Premier League. Then we talk about the negative effects. And then we try to give you a little bit of advice. How can you go and be a good tourist while you're there? What should you know before you go, and what should you do and not do when you're there? The intent is not to bash tourists. Almost all of us are tourists in some way, and we'll make that clear at the beginning, but to chart a more sustainable path forward for the game we love, and international as well as local fans. I continue to be amazed by the range of countries this podcast is being listened to from. Keep seeing new ones popping up as well. Please do spread the word. Spend a few seconds for a like or rating. Leave a voicemail. By the way, thank you for two particularly wonderful ones after the Israel episode. They meant a lot to me, and I won't play them on the air as promised, but thank you. You know who you are. And also tell your friends about this podcast. And today, especially tell your friends that want to go visit a Premier League game soon. The soundtrack you will hear throughout this episode is from the British band The Enemy. The song is titled We'll Live and Die in These Towns. The band is from Coventry. This is also the song that's played before games from Coventry City, and it's chronicling life in this native city in the Midlands in England. Why stay, how stay, despite all the disadvantages of being local. We're two Felipes today, and two real professors. But visiting professor for today is Felipe Tobar from Clemson University in South Carolina. And before we get into your research about tourism, over-tourism, the global branding of the English Premier League in particular, what's your football soccer journey? It's not English at all, so walk us through it a little bit, how you came to the game.
All right. Thanks for hosting me and to participate in your podcast. It's a pleasure. Well, I am from Brazil. Was born and raised in Brazil, in the city of Joinville, south of Brazil, where we had a huge influence of European immigration in the 19th century.
Italian, a lot of it?
Italian, but specifically Germany, Switzerland, Norway. So yeah, we are very Germanic city, put this way, or downtown areas resembles a lot of Bremen. I was really impressed with that when I visited Bremen last year. But when I was 3, I was already wearing my Romario jersey. I was Romario, my brother was Bebeto, just 1 year before the 1994 World Cup. And curiously, I didn't pick a team until I was 6 or 7. But my father used to work in Porto Alegre, where Grêmio plays. And we went to the Olímpico Stadium. And at that moment in history, the stadium had a barbecue house. And Felipão, or one of the most memorable coaches in Brazilian football history, was eating with former President Fabio Koff, and my father asked to take a picture, and so Felipão put me in his arms, and I asked my name. I said Felipe, and he said, "Well, I'm Felipe too. You need to be a Grêmio supporter." And from there, I was a Grêmio supporter, and I participated in the fencing for when between I was 14 to 18. Going to away games, home games. Actually, I always complained against the tourists that I saw in the stands, and I was not good enough to play football. As you can imagine,
yeah, same here.
The competition is huge in Brazil. Although I have very good friends that became professional futsal players, including one playing in Barcelona now, Ferrão, which is 2 times best futsal player in the world. So I decided to go and work with football through other means, and I decided to join the law school, and it was clear that I wanted to be a football lawyer, and I became a football lawyer. Worked for my hometown club, Joinville Esporte Clube, for about 10 years. 4 years I practiced law in the club, overseeing the contracts, defending the players at the supreme football court. But corruption took me out of the scene. As a lawyer, you need to clean the messes of presidents and directors.
Okay.
And I didn't want that for me. So I decided to join academia, and then I saw that during my master's, I found out the concept of sport heritage, and Dr. Gregor Ramshaw who is the lead figure in this work, at least in the US. I approached him to do a PhD at Clemson University to further explore this concept. And since we are here at the Parks and Recreation Tourism Management Department, I necessarily had to intersect the concept with one of these 3 areas, and I decided to mix with tourism. And from them, we started, let me put this way, a longitudinal series of studies to access these relationships between the tourism industry and football industry, and how that has been changing fans' experiences and accessibility as well to football fans, more unprivileged football fans. And yeah, we're still in process. We're still working in several projects, but the kind of my football background as a fan and how that changed, how I entered in academia is by this process.
A very intertwined journey. I don't even need to ask the other question anymore, which was what drew you to academia. Is that scholarly angle what brought you to write about the English Premier League rather than your attachment to any particular English club?
Yes, that was the case. I don't have any attachments with any football clubs in England. I visited England in 18, I'm sorry, for a football collective conference. So that was in Glasgow. So I intentionally visited England 3 days before, so to literally be able to visit the grounds, and I was put myself in this label as an ethnographic researcher as well, and I was able to create connections with locals. One in particular was former even tour guide at Old Trafford, who was banned from Old Trafford because of some comments against Chinese visitors.
Okay.
That
As a tour guide during his job as a tour.
As a tour guide, he complained because those fans didn't get the meaning of what is Old Trafford.
Yeah.
How to leave the club, or how to at least appreciate the club. And I watched the game with him. He was a scalper at that moment. He was in front of Old Trafford selling tickets, and so I got a good access to half scoffs, sellers. Those people that work surrounding the game. But of course, I visited stadium tours, and I saw there was an issue there. Particularly because with the atmosphere, because I confess to you and your audience, I almost slept during the game between Man United and Young Boys, Champions League. Was a completely silent place. It was like, as they chant in the stands of Anfield, Old Trafford is a fucking library.
We have the same chant about Arsenal. Yeah, the Highbury Library.
Yeah, and it was true. It was true. In front of me, there were two Asian tourists, only watching the game through their phones and interacting with probably their friends back in Asia. And that pissed me off a little bit, because I was there for the game, not to show others that I was there. And I saw how that affected the local experience. And then that was like the starting point, one of the starting points to start understanding how tourism has been influencing the match day experience, but in a broader sense, how it's been helping to transform football clubs.
So I know I have American listeners who either have been to one or two Premier League games in their life, or who aspire to go to one, and they may be listening to this now, asking themselves, bloody hell, is that me? Am I like the worst tourist that Felipe describes here? So let's dial back a little bit. What is tourism? What is a tourist in the first place, before we dive into the phenomenon of football tourism and what it does to local soccer in England?
Okay, so tourism is, I will put it in simple terms, right? I'm not theorizing much. So tourism has three main dimensions. First, a spatial dimension, which requires an individual or a group of individuals to leave their home environment and then comes the second element, which is temporal element, for a specific amount of time, more than 1 day and less than 365 days. Normally, when we go as to away matches, right? You come back at the same day, you'll be probably considered a day tripper or an excursionist. So in the proper sense of the term, you are not a tourist if you don't stay 1 night in the destination that you decided to go.
Right.
And lastly is the motivation component. So there are extrinsic and intrinsic motivations that guides an individual to go to a football match, in this case, or any destinations in tourism. And these three main elements makes the concept of tourism in a very simple idea that I think it's easy for people that are not from academia to understand what is tourism.
All right. That's fair. And I recognize now when I have been a tourist related to football and when I haven't been. During those between 1 and 365 days, what does the typical Premier League tourist normally do? So what are the phenomenons, as well as what are perhaps the numbers, if you have any, about soccer tourism happening to England?
The phenomenon of tourism in the Premier League is not new, but very different from what it was in the past. Let's start in the 70s and the 60s, particularly in the 60s, with some literature covering the display of Scandinavian fans and Maltese fans, particularly linked with Manchester United. But at that moment, people that we would normally not consider tourists nowadays. We probably would use terms as pilgrims as someone that have a good attachment, solid attachment with the club,
Right.
that know the unwritten rules of the stands, that has a deep knowledge, historical knowledge about the club, about its culture, about its traditions,
Mhm.
about how the local fans perceive the match they experience. And but especially after the event of the Hillsborough tragedy in 1989, things started to change. The demographics of football tourists kind of reverse.
Yes.
In
Yes. I mean, and that's also when the Premier League starts. There's a
exactly.
whole lot of stuff happening early 90s.
Yeah.
We'll get to that in a second.
Yeah, for sure.
Before perhaps do you have any numbers?
Yeah,
Anything from how many people do these stadium tours, or what kind of economic impact does it have on the English economy
So
at this
I
point?
was
What do
able.
you know?
I was able to talk directly with the museum directors, stadium tours and museums directors. So, for instance, Man United had an average of 310,000 fans visiting Old Trafford as a stadium tour and museum. And this normally happens 2 days before and 1 day after the game.
So this is per season visitors.
Per season visitor. And Old Trafford, that was 2019. Old Trafford was the most visited pay attraction in Manchester. Then when Liverpool won the Champions League, they became the most visited stadium tour and museum attraction in England. It surpassed Man United. So it tells us that the sporting glories has an effect on that.
Yeah. So now it's West Ham, since we're European champions, right?
Yeah, Conference League, right? Liverpool FC was interesting because they increased their attendance from 1,073 fans to 3,400 to 304,000 fans. They kind of double in a period of 4 years, from 2015 to 2019. I like to say that Liverpool is a case in particular because they have a head of tourism, and this is the only club in England that has a head of tourism, at least from my knowledge. And they are very, very well connected with the tourism sector. Liverpool has received several accolades at tourism fairs, tourism awards. And that is really, really reflecting on the number of tourists attending Anfield. That is not by chance that they signed a partnership with Expedia as the travel and tourism official partner. Other clubs like Chelsea had an average of 200,000 fans, also receiving accolades from the Visit Britain Association, which is the tourist industry association in England, responsible to sell the UK abroad, which is very, very connected with the development of Premier League clubs, because it's really as a unique product to sell what is Britain abroad.
Right.
So other clubs like Manchester City, at the time that I collect data in 2019, had 80,000 fans.
Okay.
I assume this number is going to increase dramatically in the next few years. At that point, Manchester City didn't even have a museum inside the club.
Interesting.
Well, yeah, it was a trophy room. Was like a corridor with some trophies. But since they are winning trophies every single season now, they might now have a space to create a museum. And there are some other studies from 2023 pointing out that these concerns have been raised because of the number of tourists attending the match days at Etihad Stadium. So we have this huge influx. There are surveys from Visit Britain from 2012 and 2014 pointing out to over 1 million tourists only going to football matches.
Only football tourists. Wow.
Yes, only football tourists. But there is a huge disparity in terms of where those football tourists comes from. in globalization, you have winners and losers, right? There are some uneven distribution of impacts, and the top 5 fans countries that goes to football games in the Premier League.
Okay, can I guess?
Yeah, please.
China.
No. That was from 2014. That's the last number that they have.
Wow. Korea.
Nope.
Bloody hell. America.
Nope. Well, America is
Okay,
one of them. America is one of them. It's top.
But not top.
Not top. Not top.
What is top? You tell me.
Top, according to the results, is Ireland, and then Norway.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, yeah.
Then you have Americans, you have Germans, which is curious.
Yes.
In the you have as well people from Malta, not in great numbers, but the top 5. The top 5 was Norway, Ireland, Norway, Sweden, the US, and if I'm not wrong, the Dutch.
Okay. So I mean, what that tells you, proximity matters a lot.
Proximity matters.
There, most of these countries I would not have first thought when I thought of the classical Premier League tourists. I mean, I had the prejudices that probably everyone has, and I guess China and Korea first.
Well, I think the distance affects a lot, as you said. But then in 2019, they have done a research with international bus seekers, the ones that are considered tourists that like action, like excitement, and their holidays have this really connection with football. And they have done a study showing that. And then Chinese appears. The Asian fans came up really clear. Yeah. Likewise, the United States fans. In this particular survey, they asked what drives you to go to football games in the Premier League, and if the Premier League was the most watched leagues for them. And the atmosphere of the football stadiums was what have driven them to attend football matches.
The tremendous atmosphere at the Premier League.
Yeah, tremendous.
Yeah.
And in that sense, there's a very interesting paper. I don't remember who wrote that paper, but there was a project that was presented at a Football Collective conference in Sheffield in 2019, showing how media broadcasting changes the sound after the goals to make it more impressive, to make that there is a huge electrical atmosphere going on.
Right.
And
the roar sound gets amplified, right?
Yeah, and the sound, the roars were the same. Like, let's say like West Ham score or Luton Town score. Well, Luton Town was not playing that moment, but there are different sounds, right? When an away team or a home team scores. But it was intentionally designed to convey a huge atmosphere. But Premier League has been through Visit Britain as well. They have been really able to leverage the appeal of the Premier League as a tourism product. And we have been seeing not top clubs, right? Like let's put it the Big Five, but we have been seeing Fulham partner with Visit Florida. Yeah, I've been seeing West Ham partner with Kissimmee.
Yes. By the way, now that partnership ended after Kurt Zuma's cat kicking affair. I'm not going to go into details about that, but yeah, that partnership is no more. And even Crystal Palace has stadium tours now.
Yes.
The last one to offer stadium tours.
The toilet smells of desperation. The streets soul echo of aggravation. And you wonder why you can't get no sleep when you've got nothing to do and you've had nothing to eat. Your life's slipping and sliding right out of view, and there's absolutely nothing that you can do. Well, we'll live and die in these towns.
that's well past what the founders of the Premier League imagined in 1992. So I want to take us there briefly, because a lot of what we're discussing now is, I mean, it's well past what happened then, but it's a similar direction. This is an intersection of neoliberalism and globalization in Britain under government then, but also increasingly globally. And then in football, with the falling away of any transfer regulations of European Union players within the European Union, right? So the Bosman case in the 90s, the internationalization of all these squads. Private TV is coming in, right? Sky is coming in. And we have stadiums that are now all-seaters after the catastrophes that you mentioned as well. That's where we kind of start the story, 1992. Is that when you should begin the story of the Premier League as a tourist phenomenon, or would you peg the beginning a bit earlier, a bit later?
Well, as a tourist phenomenon was earlier, right? As I mentioned,
earlier, yes.
Have cases of tourists going to stadiums, but the demographics of tourists changes from there. The types of tourists attending football stadiums changes drastically. Not in the 90s, I would say, particular in the 2010s and from them.
Okay, so the first decade of the Premier League is essentially building, but it's not this explosion of global.
No. It was if you remember the in the 90s, the big leagues were Italy, and Spain, right? The Premier League really becomes a successful product in the 2000s. I would put this way. The transfer of Beckham to Real Madrid really showcased the magnitude of the league. Let me put this in this way. But it is really when those football clubs become aware of the potential, the commercial opportunities at the global level, the global stage, that the Premier League becomes a global product. And that is in the turn of the 21st century, and 20th century to the 21st century. If you remember, Manchester United in 1998 removes from its crest the words football club.
Right.
And it becomes a kind of a global brand, more than a football entity, right? They were also the first club to launch the first TV club, Man United TV. And that was
on-demand TV station.
On-demand TV, broadcasted to China, to Asia at that moment. So I would say that these 5-6 top clubs have been fundamental to the success of the Premier League at the global stage. But the incorporation of the tourist industry in the Premier League really starts slowly in the 2000s and kind of booms in the last decade. We have been seeing so many partnerships between football clubs and destination marketing organizations.
Yes.
We have been seeing football clubs now being visited by social media celebrities as a way to attract tourists. We have been seeing the creation of stadium tours and museums, right? Like in 1998, Man United created its stadium tour and museum, which was followed by other clubs. But in the 2010, we literally see the emergence of the majority of stadium tours and museums being open to all tourists from all over the world. Like if you go to Liverpool FC, the tour is offered in more than 9 languages. So it's literally a global attraction.
Yeah.
And in common, these stadium tours and museums always ended at the club shop.
Of course, yes.
So it is. Well, let me put it this way: the tourist phenomenon in the Premier League has served to boost the commercial and global plans of these football clubs.
Of course, we should say briefly who the top 6. That does not mean the top 6 in the table. The top 6, or the Sky 6, as they're also known because of the TV.
The Sky 6.
2 Manchester, so United and C, Liverpool, And then 3 London clubs: Arsenal, Tottenham, and Chelsea. So that's that would be the top 6, the revenue drivers.
Yes. And when they created the Premier League, Everton was one of the top 5.
Yes, unthinkable, isn't it? But yeah.
And no longer more a powerful club with huge influence in that. It's not anymore in the top 6, right? In the current top 6. So things have changed as well. But yeah, tourism is, I would put it, 21st century phenomenon. It's now consolidated.
Yeah. And measurable. And thank you very much for some of the numbers that you're throwing in as well. It just gives us an idea of the scale of this. Now, Felipe, isn't this great? Isn't this wonderful? The world coming together around the beautiful game and gathering in these beautiful cathedrals in England. Shouldn't we love this? You're saying, and of course I agree with you, but you're saying there's a rub here. And there are real sustainability issues.
There are.
Take us to what this tourism does that's not nice and beautiful and glorious to the culture of the sport we like.
So, as you really pointed out, it is beautiful. It is great for a few. Let me put it this way. Tourists, normally they have this once in a lifetime opportunity when they travel to the Premier League. It means that they have spent so much money in travel, in lodging, food, in all the tourist expenses that they will not complain to spend 400, 500, even 700 pounds, as I saw a Japanese tourist Spain to watch the Merseyside Derby in England when I was there.
For one game, correct?
For only one game, which if you put in numbers, this is more than one season ticket holder, right? So numbers have also pointed out that an average of 15 to 20% of football stadiums and those big clubs are tourists. They're composed of tourists, and that approximately, again, 15 to 20% of the match day revenues are driven by the hospitality sector, by the VIP sections, the boxes, right? That normally are very, very expensive to get into. Now it's very easy. The tourism industry around football is well structured to offer flights, accommodation, and tickets for anyone that wants to go. Liverpool is a case. They have this partnership with Expedia Group. So
it's a sleeve sponsor as well now for Liverpool, right? It's on the sleeves of the jersey too.
Yeah, it's a sleeve sponsor. Yeah. We also have currently Visit Rwanda in Arsenal.
Right.
As a sleeve partner.
And even where it's not on the sleeves, there are international ticket partners. And I know for West Ham, for example, there's these contingents and you get them on certain platforms and they're not in the local market.
Yeah. This is not a recent phenomenon, as I said. Like back in the 2000s, we've seen Man United bring in Asian tourists through Thomas Cook Travel and Tourism, which is now closed. But they were really literally able to attract tourists, including non-football fans. Okay, and non-football fans have been considering this experience as a nice, let me put this way, a nice day out. One more of the attractions that they're going to visit. A place in which they will be able to showcase to their followers and their social medias that they were there. Liverpool FC have even reached to the point to put into the VIP sections of Anfield a book of rules of football to literally educate tourists that were there. So that's the kind of the type of tourists that are going to those games and are driving the revenues of these clubs in so high numbers that it literally doesn't matter anymore for the football clubs to listen to the complaints of local fans. We will be talking later. There are some movements now that like downsides about this management position, but it from the commercial perspective, from a profit point of view, it is more lucrative to welcome tourists than welcoming local fans, because these tourists, beyond paying those huge amount of money for match day tickets, they will be spending a lot in the club shop. They will be touring the stadium and visiting the museum. So they'll probably be living there around, if they go to a VIP match day experience, around $1,000.
A smashed up window. You can't go out if anybody calls you, cause you can't have a bath when there's no hot water, and your friends are out on the town again, and you ask yourself if it'll ever end, and it's all too much for your head to take, just a matter of time before you break. Well, we'll live and die in these towns. Don't let it drag you down, don't let it drag you down now.
I mean, they're the winners. The clubs are the winners in some form. Who are the losers here? What is this doing?
The losers are local fans who are not capable of keeping up with the increase in the ticket prices. Are the ones that also have been complaining about the new dynamics of sitting in the stands, in which you are not able anymore to spot your local friend. There is this phrase in Anfield: "I'm no longer able to spot the scouts in the Kop." I'm between people from all over the world that doesn't share the same interest in the game.
The Kop being the main stand behind the goal, formerly standing area. Now, of course.
Yeah, exactly. And what is curious is that when I was touring the stadium tour of Anfield, the tour guide, which was a huge Liverpool local fan, he was very meaning, saying that in this Kop, you're not allowed to use your phone. You need to support your football club. But that was off the script, that's for sure. I asked him, but he wanted to educate tourists. So these tourists, normally they don't know the chants. They are very into their cell phones during the game, watching through the screens. They are buying half and half scarves, which normally brings...
Oh my goodness, yes. Yeah. Okay. Uh-huh. Yeah.
So... You know, like for a local fan, you will never accept someone holding, let's say, Man United crest or name next to Liverpool, or City or any other team. But this is a tourist souvenir, so you bring back to your country, and it's a remembrance of that you have been there, right? So this has literally pissed off so many local fans against those tourist behaviors. And I like to stress that it's all about behavior. It's not about nationality, particularly because like you and like other friends that I have, they go as tourists, but they understand the dynamics of the stands and respects the way locals wanted to live the football culture. Right. And we put this in a way that it might not be sustainable in the long term for these English Premier League clubs to keep not listening to the complaints of local fans.
Why? Why is it not sustainable?
Because
eventually, culture, are you going to lose this? Are you going to lose the very product you're selling? Is that what's going on?
Yes. You if you don't have the locals in the stands, if you don't have the transmission of football traditions, of football culture among generations of football fans, if you don't have this, as you experienced, I experienced, we had people that we literally saw in the stands that taught us how to support the team, taught us how to leave the stands. So if you don't have the economic means to go to the stands, and if in that space you cannot be with your friends or with the ones that you like to watch the games, what are the motivations to continue going? right? You're probably going to be turning your back to non-league football in England, which is a phenomenon that is happening now.
Very much so. Yeah. Yeah. And I've had two non-league clubs on this show, and a lot of it is disgruntlement with where football is headed in the league.
Yeah, there is this disfranchisement, right? We have been seeing this, that there's a gentrification process leading to a place displacement effect, and caused by overtourism, caused by the presence of the behaviors of those certain tourists that are not aligned with the expectations of local fans to how you should be experience the game. So recently, last year, after the European Super League project, right, that they have created, there was a report in the UK government's independent fund-led review of football governance.
Yes, regulator suggestions. Yeah. So government review of football.
Mm-hmm. And they interpret football as heritage for being integral to the identity of communities, which demanded protection from mismanagement practice. One of the outcomes of these independent report was the creation of the fan engagement standard.
Yes.
2023, March 2023, to bring out more levels of transparency, more governance to the football clubs. Right. And one of the outcomes of this particular fan engagement standard was that the Premier League demanded that every club created fan advisory boards. And among the points of discussion within this fan advisory boards was not only the preservation of club heritage, for instance, the idea in which you will not be able to change the crest of your club, the colors of your club to attend international markets. Mm-hmm. But also we're talking about ticket prices, ticket arrangement. We're talking about club community engagement. Mm-hmm. But to what extent this fan advisory board will have a voice, will have an influence to ensure that the locals' experience are also heard?
It all depends on how these are composed and put together. I see it firsthand at West Ham. There's a lot of dissent over, well, then who is on the board? Is it going to be handpicked people by the owners? And you have the whole process. And
I really don't believe that there will be a positive effect, because we've been seeing Tottenham Hotspurs just increase the prices of tickets for next season. Mm-hmm. And local fans really complain. My argument is that American owners have tried so hard to implement the franchise model and the ways they organize sports in America into Premier League clubs, that fans are only viewed as consumers. And if these consumers doesn't have the means to participate in this cultural product, let's put it this way, it's not a problem to them. They will find other consumers that can be there. So I'm very, very pessimist on the future of the Premier League in terms of the cultural sustainability of football traditions. And that raises us, and for your tourist audience, an important question. What is my responsibility as a tourist when I go to a Premier League game?
Good. Well, I just hand it over to you. You're asking yourself the best questions now. That's exactly where it's going to go next. I mean, I just talked to a friend earlier this week who is American, into Tottenham Hotspurs, planning his first trip and wondering when, where to buy tickets, what about tours, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm sure there's quite a few listening out there who are in that boat with regard to some club or the other. What should they be mindful of?
I think first and foremost, it's okay. It is encouraging that you attend a Premier League game as a tourist. It's what I'm trying to say here is not a problem at all to do it, but it's a problem when you do it without respecting the views of the local fans that first and foremost were the ones responsible to create the atmosphere that probably attracted you to go. So if I were in the position to give any advice to future tourists, including your friend going to Tottenham, I would say first learn about the culture of the club, learn about the traditions of the fans, learn the music, learn the songs that you're gonna be chanting during that game. Make sure that you have a ticket from official official source in the club, and this is really, really interesting because we have been seeing locals taking advantage of that. Since they're season ticket holders, they can sell one game here and one game there.
Of course.
And they are also they're responsible to keep bringing tourists because they are leaving their seats to tourists in order to make a living. So it's not just the tourists that could be blamed. The locals also should be blamed. Those locals, right? But know the unwritten rules of the stands. Try to check the fan signs of the club that you're going to attend. See how they are taking the tourists, how they are looking to tourists. Because if you are, let's say, in the Kop stands at Anfield, you might be a target. You might be viewed as someone unwelcome there.
Yeah.
And that can happen.
Right.
The safest way is always going to a VIP section. It's always going to a hospitality box.
It's also the most expensive way.
Most expensive.
Often, yeah.
But like it's literally also very important for me, at least, and from those locals that I was able to see. Don't use your cell phone all the time. Don't try to take pictures every corner.
It's a general rule for life, but also applies to football stadiums. Yes.
Exactly. You can take one picture and another during the game. You do one short video, but don't be a passive supporter. Be an active supporter. Follow the game. You're not in a theater. You are in a football stand. You're in a football stadium, where that idea of the 12 men is prevalent, right? Is a thing. These football clubs, these fans really believe that they have a contribution to deliver for the game outcome, for the result of the game. So it's not a nice day out. It's not an entertainment experience. It's literally tied to their identities and how they wanted their club to be successful. So also no pizza boxes while the game is happening. No eating.
Yeah.
Right. So which is completely, totally the opposite experience that you have in America. Right.
Yes, it is, isn't it?
So
I'm so glad I heard my daughter say it wasn't football, but it was her school's basketball game, and she saw other students getting food during the game, and she said, I never eat during the game. I would never do that.
Yeah, exactly. It's,
yes, you've been taught well.
It's a different way of living the sport. It's a different way of seeing the sport. What sports can bring to you as in
Yes.
And I don't think, and for obvious reasons, football clubs in the Premier League have not been teaching tourists on those unwritten rules. Because, of course, if someone listens to that, will think twice in going there, right? But I think the demographics are going to continue to change. And maybe in the future, this discussion that we're having will no longer be realistic to have.
Yes.
And especially since there is a trend among football fans to follow more the players than the clubs.
Individual players. Yeah.
The players. So I don't know to what extent that can affect the demographics of stadiums as well and how they behave. I was here at Atlanta United against Inter Miami, and they said it was full of fans. It was an Argentinian game. It looked like an Argentinian game, but who knows what is next? I do believe that there's more room for growth in tourism in the Premier League, with the acceleration of globalization. It's gonna get easier and easier to travel around the world. The flights are gonna be shorter in time, and the attractions that football clubs are now being able to create also being increasing in numbers. Like, for instance, Liverpool FC just created a attraction outside of the stadium, in which you can climb the walls of Anfield and see the view of Liverpool.
Okay.
Who would consider that the stadium will become a climbing spot for tourists?
Yeah, it's very Instagrammable too. Yeah. Wow.
So they're also now creating packages for tourists to be able to train at the grounding facilities, which is super expensive.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
if they're creating, it's because there is a public for that. There's demand. Who knows? Maybe they realize that they need the local fans, they need the local culture, the traditions of these stands, and they use these profits to make more accessible, like in Germany, right? Like,
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know if normally I'm the cultural pessimist on here, but I'm not even sure if I'm as pessimistic as you might be, because there is a tipping point at where profits will be affected. No? I mean, you gotta have there's got to be something left to sell, and the tipping point is not going to be reached tomorrow or next week or next year. But no,
I don't know. I think not in the next 20, 30 years.
Okay.
I think. But if you look into the numbers of socioeconomic numbers in England, this new generation, they're the 20s now. They're not in the workforce. They don't have the means to go to stadiums as people in their 40s and 50s.
Yeah. No,
right?
That's a real. So generationally, you're right. That is a real concern as well for many clubs.
Yeah.
But maybe not for the clubs, but for many supporters, trusts, advocacy.
Yeah, I've even heard, and I think it's important to share that. I've heard from a friend that works in football here in the US. I will not say where, but he works in a federation. He said that Brentford directors have shared with him that the Premier League depends upon American market, which means that in the next 10 years, they need to have a Premier League match happen in America.
Mm-hmm.
Because the consumption of the Premier League within Europe and within England particularly is now getting to a point that is going to be less significant in terms of profit than the American market and also the Asian market.
Yeah.
So that's why they're bringing the Premier League Summer Series to America. That's why they're continuing with the Premier League Asia Trophy since 2004 in Asia.
And that's why you think there will also be official league games in America?
Yes. There'll probably be one fixture here happening like the NFL does. So they're literally paving the way. The Premier League was just, for me, the Super League was just a way to push to the extreme this rule, the Overton rule. If you are aware of the Overton rule,
the Overton window, yeah, correct.
The Overton window,
open more, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Push to the extreme to make more acceptable, less drastic idea. Right?
I mean, the Champions League reform in a part is a testimony to that already. We're entering a new Champions League format, much more representation for kind of legacy top clubs, yada, yada, yada. Yes, I think your thesis on that is spot on. Yeah.
Well, I think that's going to happen very soon. And it
won't be Bournemouth against Brentford.
It's going to be Chelsea and Arsenal, a London derby in New York.
Yeah, something like that.
And that's Again, it's because who are in charge of these football clubs? Americans. It's impossible not to ask them to bring their conceptions of business into these new football clubs. They will try to implement what has been successful for them, and it is a league without promotion and relegation. But if you cannot do that, they will implement other tactics to make sure that the profits raise. And I think this is one of those tactics.
We'll live and die in these towns. Don't let it drag you down, don't let it drag you down now. We'll live and die in these towns. Don't let it drag you down, don't let it drag you down now. Oh now. Die in these towns. Don't let it drag you down. Don't let it drag you down.
I don't want to end all negative. You know, examples of supporter resistance that might be of interest even to American fans.
Premier League?
Yeah, I mean, supporters' trust, for example, a requirement in the new government regulations is now something that every club is required to have if you are a supporter of even the Sky 6 top Premier League club. Check your supporters trust out. That is supposed to be an advocacy organization, and you can become a member against very little money and have some, at least it's another +1 number on the sheet of enrollments there with which they can confront the club. So there is that. There's fanzines. There's independent supporter organizations. Are you aware of any?
Well, Manchester United
movements?
Yeah, Manchester United supporters threat has been active against the Glazers, right? Newcastle fans now against the Saudis, but without results, fortunately. Been seen, which is like really interesting, like how Chelsea fans welcome Toddy Boyle, right, as a new American owner.
Yeah.
After Abramovich, they celebrated because he brought so many players to right. I think 10 in the first season. And they were very, very important to not allow the European Super League to come up. The Chelsea fan base, right?
They were the first ones to be out on the street.
Exactly. So
some of them can't even afford tickets, but they're still out on the street there.
But I think the problem is that the critical mass of English Premier League fans do not conceive football as a political act, as in Germany. And that's the lack. That's the lack of connection that is necessary to make sure collective efforts are successful. And I don't think that's you have that in great amount in the Premier League. And if you see when you have that, the outcome is that they're creating their own clubs, FC United of Manchester, City of Liverpool, or they're turning back to non-league clubs where they will be able to do it because they can create the social structure to live how they think football should be lived. The social structure, the hyper-capitalist social structure of football, where they have these global ownerships, simply suffocates any attempt to change the way football has been guided or driven. In Germany, you have the 50% +1 rule. Fans are the majority stakeholders. If they get together, they can have the final voice. They can have the final votes. And you have been seeing they're rejecting these ownership changes and these investments from overseas, right?
Well, the investor deal it went through like 2 weeks ago. in part because of clubs where 50+1 is being undermined through various loopholes. So I don't see Germany as a foolproof example anymore at all. But you are right. There's a different model.
Yeah, I mean, but the protests in the stands that you saw happening in Bundesliga 2 and Bundesliga 1 were like massive.
Yes, against that deal, and they do.
And probably this deal, okay, passed, but I'm not sure if this deal will continue, like will resist, because in Germany those football fans, they're at least, let's put like FC St. Pauli or Bayern Munich, they're okay to leave the stadium and not attend the game. They are okay with that because they have proven record that the resistance works in the long term, right? And I don't know if the English fans can resist as much as other fan bases.
And maybe we can also add to our list of tips along these lines. Look at Supporters Trust, look at what fanzines are writing, educate yourself before you go, yada, yada, yada.
Mm-hmm.
So visit, maybe check out a non-league club in that city. See what's going on below the top leagues, and look at supporter culture and get that window open for you toward English football culture that way too.
Exactly. It's well recommended, and they will welcome you there as a tourist. There's no problem for them. For them, I think the problem is the behavior. That's what I heard when I visited FC United of Manchester. When recently I've been organizing a research on that, going to England to visit non-league football clubs to understand more about what they think of what is an authentic football experience. And probably we'll be able to discuss more in the future of their thoughts. But it's definitely a very, very interesting option if you want to leave what you always have been promised to leave when you go to a Premier League game, right? You can see people standing, supporting, drinking, chanting, that camaraderie that those pundits in TV says that happens in the Premier League. You see in those environments. And the final tip is don't have high expectations for a Premier League game. You might be very disappointed.
Yeah.
Put this way.
We're sounding now like we bashed the league in its future, and in some ways we have, but you have spent as much time writing on this. I have spent as much time talking about this regularly because we love the game. Yeah. And because we're invested in what its future is, and because in some way or the other we have been tourists too, and we are asking those questions of ourselves as well.
Yeah, and I think it's maybe I don't personally want a stadium full of tourists, but I don't want a stadium with no locals. I think a mix should happen. Mm-hmm. And football clubs needs to find the proper balance to make sure that both type of fans are happy. Yeah.
Yes, agreed. The last question maybe would be for you. What's next in your research? You already mentioned trips. You presented recently. On St. Pauli, and there's dissertation related work there. I don't know what you're planning to do with that, but what's next? What should we look? Well, what should look for you?
I have 3 avenues now. First, in continuation of this football tourist phenomenon, we are currently writing 3 papers. The second one is around we're doing a multi-dimension analysis of stadium tourism museums across the world. That includes clubs in South America, the US, Europe, Asia, trying to identify what they offer and what is most accepted by fans, what they most like when they tour those stadiums. And lastly, we're doing a research on the Women's Football World Cup, try to identify the motivations of women's football tourists to attend the 2023 World Cup in New Zealand and Australia. We predict there are some political components. A second avenue of my research is related to the dissertation, is related to the presentation that you mentioned. I have this long-term study of understanding how European football clubs have been acknowledging their difficult heritage, their experience under authoritarian regimes at their stadium tours and museums, whether they promote or marginalize that. And I will be presenting a documentary that's going to be available on YouTube through my Football Studies YouTube channel. After July, I'm going to be presenting the Leisure Studies Association conference in Scotland, and which is the documentary about how Real Madrid have experienced Franco's regime and the Spanish Civil War, whether or not they talk about it in the Stadium Tour Museum, and also the analysis of FC São Paulo under the Nazi regime, and how tourist and commercial forces have been affecting the decision to engage in those discussions or not. Mm-hmm. And the name of the documentary is the game that not every club wants to play.
Very cool, and thanks for sharing a slice of your work with us. The text that much of this conversation was inspired by is a scholarly article that was published by you, and I'm glad we've done the job here of taking a scholarly article and making it a little bit more public facing and applicable as well. So that's great.
Thank you. This paper, again, I wrote with Dr. Gregory Ramshaw in 2022. A week ago, I've also published another paper for those that are interested in football tourism, and it's named Conceptualizing the Global Touristic Football Club, which we delve a little bit more into what we discussed today, not specifically with the Premier League as an example, but other leagues, other aspects of the football tourism industry.
That article is in the journal Sport in Society. It just came out a week ago, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. And if those are interested, can message you, and I have 100 free copies. So glad to share.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you for the time. Thank you for coming on. Many greetings to Clemson, where I didn't know many exciting things are happening outside of your office as well, and on the football field, and in interdisciplinary collaborations.
Yeah, I appreciate the invitation and the space to share and to have this very honest conversation, from football fan to football fan, from professor to professor. And I am again on Twitter at FB Tobar. Also have my Football Studies channel, which also has a account on Twitter or X, right? They say.
And YouTube.
And YouTube, we have Football Studies YouTube channel.
Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes. I think all of these links. Yeah, we'll put them.
It's a pleasure, and always open to connect with your audience. If they have any questions or complaints, I'm here to learn. I'm here to learn more and maybe do some more friendships.
Yeah, and whoever listens to this will be a much more knowledgeable tourist.
I hope.
Yeah. Thank you, Felipe. Be well.
Thank you.
Be well, and enjoy your next game as a tourist or not. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. See you.
happens for people like us, you know, nothing ever happened on its own. And while the toilet smells of desperation, the streets all echo of aggravation. And you wonder why you can't get no sleep when you've got nothing to do and you've had nothing to eat. Your life's slipping and sliding right out of view, and there's absolutely nothing that you can do. Well, we'll live and die, we'll live and die in these towns. Don't let it drag you down, don't let it drag you down now. We'll live and die, we'll live and die in these towns. Don't let it drag you down, don't let it drag you down now. Dirty dishes from a TV meal that went cold from the wind through a smashed up window. You can't go out if anybody calls you, cause you can't have a bath when there's no hot water. And your friends are out on the town again, and you ask yourself if it'll ever end. And it's all too much for your head to take, just a matter of time before you break. Well, we'll live and die, we'll live and die in these towns. Don't let it drag you down, don't let it drag you down now.